When I think of Capcom, I think of fighting games, and specifically the classic 2D fighting games of years past that captured my imagination and just captured my memories from when I was a kid, and that I just absolutely fell in love with. Starting with Street Fighter 2 at a local arcade in Cape Coral, Florida, all the way up to present day playing Street Fighter 5. What's going on, everyone? Jay here. The channel is Square Pegs. Today we are doing something inspired by my friend John Hancock's recent video, and I am looking at and telling you my 5 favorite 2D Capcom fighting games. Let's dive in and take a look.
There aren't many 2D fighters for Capcom that I like more than Darkstalkers 3, and there's a lot of reasons behind that, not the least of which is the unbelievably creative characters in the game. Now, you can say how great Street Fighter is, and I will say repeatedly coming up how great Street Fighter is, but Darkstalkers takes the Street Fighter formula and kind of turns it on its head by just putting a ton of imagination into it. Using monster tropes and just different legends from around the world as the character base, you get fantastic characters like Felicia and Dimitri and Sasquatch, and Victor and Morrigan. It's a great game full of tons of imagination and style, and just it doesn't take itself too seriously, which is something I really appreciate. My favorite character is Xianko, who you are seeing here. She is a ghost of 2 sisters from China. Now, the reason I choose Darkstalkers 3 is pretty simple, because they actually change the system in this game. They go from just using the standard damage system that you're going to see in most games to actually using a gauge system where after you defeat someone, the rounds just continue on and you're left with the health you had from the previous one rather than refilling you all the way to the top. So it adds a little bit of a challenge and a little bit of a spin to things. I really like the look of this game. I think the design is great. I think the stages are great. I think the combat is well balanced and well designed. This is a fantastic 2D fighter. Much like Darkstalkers, one of the things I really like about Pocket Fighter is that Capcom took a standard game and twisted it and turned it on its head. It wasn't just an opportunity to make a new fighting game. It was a chance to take characters that we had seen in Super Puzzle Fighter and turn them into an actual fighting game in Pocket Fighter. Now, I of course love the designs in this game. I think the characters are absolutely adorable. Having chibi versions of favorite characters from fighting games is pretty cool, and they all look great. And there's these really neat combo sequences that happen in the game where the characters actually turn into these crazy costumes. Like, there's a point where Dan turns into, I believe, an Elvis impersonator, and it's great. Morrigan turns into a nurse with a giant needle. It's ridiculous. The game isn't a spectacular fighting game. I want to make that very clear. Now, this isn't a list of what I think are the best fighting games. These are just my favorites. And the reason this is one of my favorites is because of the good memories wrapped around it, playing with my friend Corey and playing with other friends and really enjoying this game. This was one we used to bust out every once in a while in our Friday night fight sessions as kind of a wild card in the midst of marathon sessions of King of Fighters and Street Fighter Alpha 3. Throwing in something like Puzzle Fighter out of the blue was a fun way to break things up. I really love this game. Lots of positive memories here. So I kind of went back and forth on whether or not I was going to include this game here. I do love Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, but I kept going back and forth between this and Street Fighter 5 because I really love Street Fighter 5. I think Street Fighter 5 is a fantastic game, and ultimately the reason that Third Strike gets on the list is because Street Fighter 5 has 3D rendered graphics. Even though Street Fighter 5 is a 2D planar fighter, it is 3D rendered, so I didn't want to include it on the list. So we're going with Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. I remember playing this game for the first time at Rocky's Replay in Orlando, Florida. We used to live in an apartment complex right behind Rocky's, which was an unbelievable arcade at the time, and we walked into Rocky's one day and there was a Street Fighter 3 Third Strike machine, and I was absolutely blown away. It was so much fun to play on, and I think I pumped like $10 a quarter into that machine that day. And it was something that finding it on the Dreamcast and being able to bring that arcade experience home was huge. The reason that Third Strike gets on the list and Street Fighter 3 in general is, one, adding the parry system into Street Fighter was huge. It completely changed the way the game is played and made the game go from something where people were just inputting button combinations and hoping for the best to a really finesse-based game, and it's really kind of shown how things have changed. If you watch events like EVO or things like that, where parries and just reversals and counters and things like that have become the norm and are kind of the way the series goes now. I really admire the Street Fighter 3 series for doing that. Now, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike is the best of the Street Fighter 3 series. It gets everything in there. It looks spectacular. Like, the sprites are massive, and the animations in the game are probably the best in the entire Street Fighter series, and that includes Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5. It is a wonderful game. It is very difficult. I have a very hard time with this game. I'm terrible at it, but I do love it so much. And there's awesome characters introduced in the Street Fighter 3 series that I love, like Alex and Dudley and Ibuki. It's a great game from a great series. There are few games I have played more than Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I'm a huge comic book fan, you guys know that. I've done plenty of videos on the channel about comics and my favorite comic book based games, and I think the ultimate one of all of them, number one with a bullet, far surpassing any other one for playtime, quality, and my love, would be Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Let's start with the base here. This is an extension of Children of the Atom, of Marvel Superheroes, of the original Marvel vs. Capcom, and they took everything that made those first 3 games great and cranked it way past 11 to like 5,000, because everything in this game hits. The music is ridiculous and I love it. The stage designs are fantastic. The character roster is massive. I just love everything about it. The combat system is great. It's well balanced. There's interesting characters included that you wouldn't expect to see in something like this. Getting Marrow, of all people, from the Marvel side in the game was spectacular. I could have done without Cable. Cable's a little overpowered. He's probably the least balanced character in the game, but you know what? I can forgive it because he's a lot of fun to play and he's great to beat Onslaught with at the end. Does make it a hell of a lot easier, I won't lie to you. But the Capcom side shouldn't be ignored either. Getting characters like Jill from Resident Evil, Tron Bonne from the Mega Man Legends series, it's just such a great love letter to both of these universes, to Capcom and Marvel, that you can't help but fall in love with it. And having it be an over-the-top action fest and not a balanced, grounded fighter like you see in some of the other Street Fighter games just makes this so much better. It is a wonderful game. Every version I have played, I have loved, but the Dreamcast version in particular that you're seeing here is my favorite. That was my first love, that's where I first played it, and it's something that I will continue to love for years to come. As much as I love Marvel vs. Capcom 2, my favorite 2D Capcom fighter by far is Street Fighter Alpha 3, and let me explain why. I had kind of fallen out of love with the Street Fighter series. I was kind of burnt out on Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. I just didn't give a damn anymore. I liked the universe, I liked the characters, but I was kind of over it. It was the same thing over and over and over again, so I just kind of stepped away from fighting games for years. And then I saw Street Fighter Alpha 3 on the shelf for the PS1, and I was like, alright, let's try this out, let's see what it's like. And I just fell in love with it. First off, the character roster is massive and full of just memorable, wonderful characters, and so many of them were brand new to me that I had never experienced before, and I just loved them. Dan Hibiki is one of my all-time favorite characters in any game. Like, just top of the charts for me. I love how ridiculous he is. I love Sakura. I love Karen. Getting characters that I liked, like DJ in the game, was great. Finding a backstory for some of these characters and really building out the lore of what Street Fighter is just made me so excited to play the series again, and it brought me back to Capcom, and it brought me back to the Street Fighter mythos. Not to be overlooked is my favorite Street Fighter character, and that is Sagat. I was used to Sagat from Street Fighter 2. He was a villain, he was an underling, he didn't really have much of a story. It was just kind of, he was a heavy, and that's really all it was, but I liked him. I liked playing as him. I thought getting the 2 plane projectiles was pretty neat, getting one up top, one down below. I thought that was really cool. And seeing how much bigger he became and how he became bigger than life, and learning the backstory and having that story from the anime incorporated into what ultimately became one of my all-time favorite games just meant so much to me. And then seeing his involvement with Dan's backstories, who was another character I really liked, was just awesome. He went from being a heavy to a man of honor, and I loved that. This might be my favorite fighting game. It's definitely in my top 3. There are probably some King of Fighters games that will move ahead of it, but as far as Capcom 2D fighters go, there are none that I put more time into and that I love as much as Street Fighter Alpha 3.
There you have it, everybody. My 5 favorite 2D Capcom fighting games, and these 5, to me, it doesn't get any better than. Now, if this was just my favorite 2D fighting game, ooh man, the list would have been so much different. All the King of Fighters games would have been open to me. Tons of different things like Mortal Kombat, King of the Monsters, things like that I just absolutely adored. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it kind of bugged me to not have Street Fighter V on this list. I know it is technically, like I said, a 3D rendered game, but it is a 2D planar, and those are some of my favorites. I prefer them over 3D fighters. Much as I like Soul Calibur and Tekken, 2D fighters are where it's at for me, and things that I adore. Hey, big thank you to John Hancock for this idea. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, he actually did a recent one of these, and I really dug his video. I reached out to John, and John gave me the thumbs up to make my own version of this. I appreciate it. John has been an influential and fantastic supporter of the channel ever since we met, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate both his support and his friendship. Let me know in the comments down below your favorite 2D fighting game, and if I am way off base on my opinion of any of these, I would love to hear from you guys. I've actually got a ranking video coming up where I'm going to be looking at every character from King of Fighters 97, and I might be wondering why I chose that one. All will be revealed when that video drops. Hey, if you like what I do here, please consider becoming a monthly Patreon sponsor like the fine folks you are seeing on screen right now. I love each and every one of these people. They are fantastic. I love the support that they offer the channel. And if you're unable to become a monthly Patreon sponsor, consider checking out our merchandise. Links to both the Patreon page and our merchandise page will be in the pinned comment down below, as well as links to all of our presence on social media. Till next time, guys, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me today. Until next time, remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.